Daniel Kahneman, psychologist and Nobel laureate in economics, explains in his groundbreaking bestseller, Thinking, Fast and Slow, how we have two minds in one brain, constantly in contention over our mental operations. Our default approach to thinking, including about how to solve problems, is fast. This is known as System 1 thinking. System 1 thinking is largely involuntary, automatic, and unconscious. When thinking fast, we limit our attention to information readily available, rather than search for information that could help us better understand the situation, a tendency Kahneman calls, "What you see is all there is," WYSIATI. Fast thinking is also associative. The limited information we initially have about a situation, and pay attention to, triggers a rapid and unconscious activation of related ideas we hold in memory, which trigger other associated ideas, and so on. The result of this cascading process is that we can quickly make sense of new situations, even though we have limited information, by constructing coherent stories about what is going on and what we should do. In other words, our brains excel at jumping to conclusions. In contrast to fast thinking, slow thinking, aka System 2, is voluntary because it requires effortful attention and conscious deliberation. But this effort is cognitively expensive. Mental capacity is a scarce resource, and we need to allocate it to the problem, thus the phrase, paying attention. Consequently, in solving challenging problems, we often gravitate toward the law of least effort. One way we do this is to rely on the results of the faster and cognitively cheaper System 1 approach to thinking. Our deliberative System 2 thinking then merely endorses System 1's proposals. With sufficient effort and skill, however, slow thinking can be logical, skeptical, and methodical, causing us to search for missing information, question assumptions and beliefs, and utilize tools and frameworks to make sense of a situation, resulting in a much better understanding of it and how to tackle it. But our brains only trigger slow thinking by exception, when fast thinking is ineffective at dealing with the situation at hand. Neuroscience research on problem solving bears this out. The region of the brain that is active when people solve problems quickly, based on beliefs, is distinct from the part that activates using deliberate logic, indicating that different mental processes are competing for control in problem solving. The temptation in the story about Kevin Rowlands and Dell Inc. is to think too fast about the problem and solution, or to be lazy in our slow, deliberative thinking. When presented with information about Kevin Rowlands' tenure as CEO of Dell compared to the Michael Dell era, slowing sales growth, declining market share, missed earnings estimates, falling stock price, and so on, it's easy for us to take it at face value and believe we don't need to know more. Immediately, our brains go to work on detecting the associations among the information. An important point is that Rowlands is a CEO. This is likely to trigger a belief most of us hold about leadership, that leaders can, or should, control the fate of the organizations they lead. Consequently, we attribute good performance to good leadership and bad performance to bad leadership. Connecting the dots between this association about leadership and the indicators of poor organizational performance, we quickly develop a coherent story about what's going on and jump to a solution. Fire Rowlands. But would we come to the same conclusion if we questioned the information and searched for more? For example, what if we learned that, despite Dell's declining stock price, it was still outperforming everyone else in the industry? Or that Rowlands was widely respected and admired within Dell, even though employee confidence in other senior leaders was declining? What if we had additional insight into the causes of the problem? For example, Dell sourced the faulty batteries from Sony, a supplier that everyone in the industry